Today, I am talking with Barbara Coloroso. Welcome, Barbara.
Thank you, John. It's a joy to be here to discuss such an important topic.
Well, great. I appreciate you coming on. And before we get started with questions about you and your book and the revised edition of Kids Are Worth It, I just want to have you give us a sense of who you are. Tell us a little bit about yourself to get ourselves going here.
Well, I'm a mom of three now grown kids, and I have three wonderful grandchildren. And people often say to me, wow, I'm having an empty nest next year. I said, it's never over. It's never over. We're all in this together. And I've been doing the parenting and teaching workshops for 54 years, as well as having taught kindergarten through grade 12 children with special needs, including young offenders, and then taught at the University of Northern Colorado and worked at their demonstration school where people come in and observe you working, in my case, with young offenders. And then people started inviting me to speak at their conferences and could not have created a better 5-year plan. Never used a 5-year plan. Things just happened. And I've been doing it, like I said, 54 years. Met fascinating human beings from the very young to the very old, working with First Nation communities in the inner cities and independent schools, international schools, working with military families in both Canada and the US and their bases all over the world. So I've had a fascinating experience. The thing I least like to do is write. I do have books, but that is not my favorite thing. Speaking and working with families and communities as a whole is what I really enjoy doing.
Well, you wouldn't be the first person that describes writing as something that's painful. I think George Lucas described it as nails on a chalkboard or something like that. So there are plenty of writers who are in that same boat, right?
Yeah, no, I speak it first. Someone will ask me a question, I answer. I said, well, that wasn't a bad answer. Yeah. I'm also a former Franciscan nun, obviously former, with a husband and 3 kids. And I always have to say, no, I didn't marry a priest. Yes, I met him after I left the convent for the benefit of the Catholics in the group, because that's a question. In fact, I met him at a protest march in the late 60s. So we were both akin to that. As a nun, were involved in the civil rights movement. Mm-hmm. So that laid a foundation for me. It was not a cloistered, obviously. We were a very activist order. And that opened my eyes to a whole different world. I'm glad I went, glad I left. But it has influenced my writings.
Well, for someone who doesn't like writing, you do a great job of it, because Kids Are Worth It. It's a terrific book. You have a ton of insights. We're going to go into a lot of those insights. And I think to get things started, I'd like you to just describe the different types of families that are out there, because that context will be important, because I think you'll be referring to the types of families in this conversation. So maybe give us a little bit of a lay of the land.
Yes, has studied Alfred Adler's work, and he talked about the difference between behavioral research and his very human-centered work. So when I talk about these 3 families, I use the term brick wall, jellyfish, and backbone. And if you conflate that with behaviorism, it would be the permissive family, which would be the jellyfish family, and the very authoritarian type family, which would be the brick wall. And in behavioral studies, and I have studied behavior modification and I don't ascribe to it, they just merge those 2 together. In Adler's approach and in my approach, brick wall and jellyfish are 2 extreme ways of parenting. And you don't combine them to make something better. A backbone family is very, very different. And backbone families comes in all different sizes and shapes and configurations. But if you look at a brick wall, it's my way or the highway, basically. I set the rules and you will listen. My goal is to teach kids how to think, not what to think, to enable them to stand up for values and against injustices. So the brick wall just won't cut it. But the other extreme is the jellyfish, of which I say there's an A and a B. Jellyfish A is just anything goes. Very permissive, let my kid do whatever, and the consequences will follow as they may. But children need structure in their lives. But a backbone provides it. If you look at a backbone, there's flexibility. And we need to be flexible when we're raising children within a structure that they can then begin to develop their own sense of self-discipline. They can, with that structure, flesh out their own way of being in the world. But they also need that freedom, that flexibility that you don't get from a rigid brick wall. But it's not come what may and let the kids do anything and everything and be rude and, oh, they're just expressing themselves kind of thing. I want to raise kids who, from the time they're very young, know that there are limits and boundaries in our lives, as there are. And within those limits and boundaries, there's a tremendous freedom to be all you can be. And so I use examples where you start with red pajama, blue pajama. I don't say to a 2-year-old, as a jellyfish family would, do you want to go to bed or not? That's not a question I ask a 2-year-old. But I do say, do you want to go to bed now with your red pajamas or now with your blue pajamas? And some little ones will show up with red bottoms, blue top. And I've always said in all of my philosophy working at schools and homes, if it's not life-threatening, morally threatening, or unhealthy, let it go. That purple hair will grow out when they're older. It's okay. And wearing red bottoms, blue top, they can express themselves and not get locked in a power struggle with their parents. Then you increase it as you would in any areas, including in the financial areas, which we'll be talking about later. Start at 2, and then you increase it age appropriate, ability appropriate. So in preschool, here's 3 outfits, pick one. Now, my 3rd child is an artist, very creative, and he put those 3 outfits, pick one, in very interesting combinations. So out of absolute necessity, I made him a button. Today, I would help them make their own button. And it said, I dress myself. He proudly wore that thing to school every day with his interesting combination of clothes. Then you go to school. Here's your school clothes. Here's your play clothes. Pick out something from your school clothes. And regularly, my middle daughter, who ended up being a stunt woman for a large part of her young adult years, risk taker and the like, would put together some interesting layered looks. And I have a lot of parents saying to me, when I was a middle school teacher, look at my kid. He was such a good kid. He was so well behaved, so well mannered, so well dressed. Now look at him. And I look at the kid, I get to know his parents. They say, you know what? He hasn't changed. They go, what? I say, he hasn't changed. Mm-hmm. From the time he was little, he dressed the way you told him to dress. He acted the way you told him to act. He said the things you told him to say. He's been listening to somebody else tell him what to do, brick wall. He hasn't changed. He's still listening to somebody else tell him what to do. Problem isn't you anymore. It's his peers. The kid hasn't learned how to think. So brick wall is rigid, teaches kids what to think, not how to think. Jellyfish, by and large, in all areas of their lives, is the A, which I told you is just whatever you'd like to do. And then there's the B, the neglected parent. And we think, well, they must be poor. Not true. There are a lot of very attentive poor families who make sure their kids are eating before they go to school and the like. And there are some high status families, very wealthy families, who the kids don't sit down for a meal, or it's not with their parents. So that we can't say it's a matter of wealth or where they live. The family structure for that backbone can be such a dynamic kind of structure that may change over the grandpa dies, or mom's been ill and grandma has to take over for a while, or aunts and uncles. I married into a large Italian family, in big gatherings. So family construct is more about being backbone, with limits and boundaries within reason, but giving kids the opportunity to make lots of choices and mistakes. Yeah. And unless those mistakes are life-threatening, morally threatening, or unhealthy, let them go. They'll learn from it.
Well, that was one of the big takeaways that I implemented immediately after reading your book, was the letting it go, particularly with regard to cleaning our kids cleaning their rooms. You made that specific point in the book. And I said, why am I getting myself all in a tizzy over them cleaning their rooms? It is not life-threatening. And it wasn't even that bad. It was just messy, right? And
there is a stage in most kids' life where it is messy.
Right, exactly. And there was a stage in my life where you just asked if we brought my dad in right here, he'd be like, you were the biggest slob on earth when you were 15 and 16 years old. And so that was really a helpful piece of advice. And I like your framing also in the book, as you talk about the idea of trying to raise kids with dignity, right? So that they have their own And that's what this backbone approach is leading to. And it's funny that you talk about your youngest son and the dressing, because my wife and I, when our youngest would get dressed in the morning, that when back when she was kind of 2 or 3, maybe 4 or 5 even, our favorite part of the day was when she would walk down the stairs to see what it was that she was wearing. So we had to kind of look away and make sure that we weren't laughing, but it was such a wonderful moment of the day to see what decisions she had made, and she made those decisions.
And I'll bet she's very strong-willed and independent now.
She is incredibly strong-willed and independent.
Yes, and that's what we want. You see, my goal in all of my work is to raise responsible, resourceful, resilient, compassionate human beings who do know how to think and not just what to think, who will stand up for those values. When I wrote a book on bullying, when the high-status social bully, whether they're 5 years old, and believe me, little girls can bully at 5, be mean and cruel, or 15, when the high-status social bully says to all the other girls, I don't like that new girl. If you want to be in my group, don't eat lunch with her. Now, kids raised in a brick wall family are more likely to follow that girl's edict. But a backbone family daughter, hopefully it would be your daughter that said, that's mean, that's cruel. Right. And go sit at 5 or 15, sit with the new girl, knowing that she will probably do that at cost. There'll be no scratch and sniff stickers and stars, catch and being good awards, lunch with the principal. What you'll probably get is, oh, Miss Goody Two-Shoes, or you're next. But you have raised her to know to do the right thing even when the burden is heavy. With a young boy, same thing in a locker room. When the high-status social bully, and there's several different kinds, but that kind often is very popular, including with educators. So we often dismiss what they do. And it's not being mean and cruel, they didn't mean it. But he says, look at that kid over there, different skin color or religion or gender or physical or mental ability, the big 5 for hate crimes. What makes a hate crime different than other crimes is criminal bullying. And he says, let's go mess him up. I want your son to be the one that you gave all those options to and let him make decisions. Say, back off, leave him alone. He's not such a bad kid. But he will do that at cost. He might get, what are you, chicken? What do you just like him? But they'll do the right thing, even when the burden is heavy. Because you have allowed them to experiment, to make mistakes, to go to school and somebody say, well, those are interesting socks you put on today, because they don't match and they don't care. But they can look at that and go, yeah, they're mine, instead of be embarrassed or whatever. I want kids to learn from their own living, hopefully from some things I can impart with them from my own mistakes or choices that I made and my own wisdom. See, one of the things we have to remember as parents is we are their parent until they reach puberty. And then we need to become their guide. I get a little hysterical when parents say, my teenager is my best friend. To which I say, get a life. You need to talk about your issues, go call a friend for tea. But your kid needs a model and a guide. And then in adulthood, and I have found this with my 3, and it's so heartwarming, that we become friends. Mm-hmm. I want my kids, knowing that they may choose my nursing home, to be a good friend of mine and have my interests at heart. So there is a progression here, and there's thought behind how you constantly increase responsibilities and decision-making and decrease limits and boundaries. So when they do leave our home or our schools, they're making all of their own decisions and truly responsible for all of their own behavior, and not saying things like, well, he made me do it.
Yeah, I like that framing, the idea of parent, guide, and then eventually friend. And it also makes me think of, I forget who said this, but the idea that saying this to your kid, as a parent, I will always love you. The choice as to whether I will like you or not is really your choice, which I think is very much sums up what the teenage years can kind of be like. But the idea of being their guide is really important. Now, because we are in the Art of Allowance podcast, and I want to talk about the money side, I want to pose a few questions of ideas that I talk about in my book that I kind of want to know your thoughts on, whether we did the right thing. And I also want to just let everybody know, because especially if my daughters are listening to this, like that part of it we did pretty well, letting her dress. There are plenty of fumbles that we made as parents. Let's put it like that. So,
well, we all do. We all do. In fact, I made the big mistake of well, it wasn't a mistake, really. It was very learning for me. I said to my two daughters when they had their children, I said, is there anything in your childhood you do not want me or your dad, I always put him in there too, not to do with the grandkids? My older one said, I'm going to really have to think about that. And the youngest, the middle daughter, said yes, without hesitation. She said, do you remember when we would be out in public, because I was fairly well known when they were young, kept them out of the picture as much as possible, not on all this platforms that you have today, but I would grab their arms. She said, Mom, you would grab our arms and squeeze tight. My heart sunk because that's what my mother did to us. And I had repeated that. I had strived all my life in my adult years, to get rid of the tools that I didn't find effective in my own parents, and tried to keep the ones that were. But that one was there, and I said to both of them, I promise you, I will never, ever grab my grandchildren's arm in public. I even get choked up, because I did it. I think we have to give ourselves some grace here. And luckily she could say that to me, that's one thing that bothered her. And I promised them I would never do it. And then I said, think about it. If there's anything else, let me know, because I want to be a big part of my grandkids' lives.
I love that advice. It's definitely something I'm going to ask my kids, and I appreciate the grace, because we definitely need that. I think all of us here talking and everybody listening wants a little grace as a parent, because it feels like every day there's an opportunity to screw things up, and sometimes you pull it off, sometimes you don't. We all know it, and that's just how it goes. So, okay, so let's jump into the family allowance.
Yes.
And I just want to take some time talking about the system that you set up and why you did it. Maybe talk a little bit about, did you require chores? Did you do envelopes, buckets, or jars? The more detail, the better.
Yes.
I teed it up for you, Barbara. Go.
Yes. I have this idea that kids need to learn about money, and they need to learn three things. First of all, they have to learn how to handle money at a very young age. And so when do I start it? When they don't put it in their mouths, when they're not eating it. And for some kids, they never put stuff in their mouths that were not supposed to go there. Other kids, they put anything and taste everything. So you have to know your child. Again, it's age appropriate, ability appropriate. Then you want to help them learn to make good decisions about their money, because once they have it in hand or they're watching other people use it, they need to learn, how do you make a decision about it? And then what do you do to help them set financial priorities? And so I'm talking 2 and 3-year-olds here. I had 3 kids in 3.5 years. So the first one was the oldest. The youngest was a baby, and there was a 3.5-year span there. So there wasn't much time for the differences. However, you'll find the second one learns faster than the first, because they've been observing the first. And we started with Anna. Anna is our oldest, Maria, and then Joseph, the artist, and the middle one, stunt woman. The oldest is a financial analyst as an adult.
Yeah.
So her way of handling money is very different than the middle daughter, than the artist, just by personality. But what we did with the oldest, we said, we need to find 3 containers. Do you want to make one? Is there something here in the house? Giving them decisions even as to where they're going to put their money. And so she figured jars so she could see through them. Fine. What did the middle one do? Jars. Because her older sister said, then we can see and you can unscrew the jar, but it won't fall out. All the reasons behind it. The third decided to make his own out of what was then the primitive forms of Lego. Go figure. Fine. Money goes in it. It's fine. But you let them make that choice. And then, so you talk to them about 3 things they need to do with this money that we're going to give them. You need to learn to spend it. There are 3 S's: spend it, save it, and share it. I had in my original book, give to others who need it, or that you think for a gift or something. But the share fits all those buckets there. So that's the 3. And I'm often asked, do you give your kids money or do they have to earn it? I tell my kids, whether you earn it, win it, inherit it, or get it as a gift, you need to spend, save, and share, even that birthday money. So they learn to do that. And I'm asked, well, you mean you're just going to give kids money? Because I have a job to do, and that's to teach them to be financially savvy, whether they win it, earn it, get it as a gift. So when they're young, it's a gift in that sense. And if they want, as they get older, if they want something really special and it would take them a long time to earn it, then you can help out with that. I remember my oldest wanted a new bike, very quickly had a growth spurt and had outgrown her bike. But of course, she picked a very expensive bike, just like one of her friends had. And we said, fine, we will split it in half with you because that's what we would have paid for a bike, not this other one. And then she was old enough then to do some extra chores and neighborhood things and shovel the walks for people, that kind of thing. But a friend of hers said, you know what? I've outgrown my bike. So mom says I have to sell it, but I'll sell it to you cheap. And so they negotiated and she got the bike that she really wanted that was used. Yep. But it was, so you work that way. You just don't, brick wall would say, this is how it's going to go. But you have that flexibility, but it isn't running out and getting her best favorite bike, even if it means not paying some bills. So we use our sense there. Then with the money, you start very young. Now we used to talk about pennies, but we can't talk about them anymore. They're going by the by. You might save a few just to show them what it used to be. And that leads to the fact that many young people today get credit cards very young under the supervision of their parents, where they can track what their child is spending, because what is the tool we use today? Tap and pay. So how young would I start with the tap and pay? Well, many kids, it's like 10, 11, 12. I would recommend that it start even younger. Not that they would take it with them all the time or that it would be in their possession all the time, because I could start talking to them, which applies to media and its influence, about not sharing information about your financial doings. And so I would start it even younger with them in elementary school, rather than carrying their lunch money. It's loaded on and they can then buy what they'd like. It was fascinating to me when my 13-year-old grandson said to me a few years ago, Grandma, why at Safeway do you go through the ads and look for deals before you go to the store? And then I showed him what savings with the clip deals. And he said, can I get my own Safeway card? Because when they would walk for lunch, there were specials. And so he now has that on his phone. Would I have taught him that young? Nobody asked. And he was wondering why I took so much time before I went to the grocery store. I said, because it saves money. That gives us extra money. Teaching from experience. And I think we have to drop down a bit in terms of what kids will be using in the future for what they do. And people say to me, but how much money do I give a child? Again, age appropriate, ability appropriate. You ask yourself some questions. How much can I afford? How much do I want to give them because I think they can handle it? What do they need it for? An older child who is now budgeting for her own clothing in the high school years, which she ought to be doing, is very different than the needs of a 10-year-old. And so you look at, what do they need it for? Kids who live in a rural area aren't cruising malls and spending things there. So you have to use your own wisdom as a parent and your situation as a parent. And then a kid who needs gas money for the car may need a different kind of an allowance. So you look at that, and then what you ask yourself, what do they need it for and what can they handle?
Yeah.
Do you need to give them an allowance once a month? My financial analyst daughter asked when she was 11 if she could have it all in one lump sum at the month. And she budgeted that out. The middle one, who is also very savvy and in a very different way, said, no, I'll keep it every other week. The youngest one, the artist, said, well, I want to try it for a month. At the end of the month, he said, every week, Mom. We do it every week when he didn't have any left over. So know that each one of your children will be different. You have a child with special needs.
Yeah.
The younger one may need a bigger allowance because in the end, they may be caring for that child with special needs.
I think that's such an important point, is that we want everything to be, even as parents, right? But our kids are just not at all the same. I mean, and so much of it is just hardwired, right? I mean, that's one of the things that I've learned as I get older, is just they come out a certain way. And yes, and there's a nurture portion of it, but I think we underestimate the nature portion and we overestimate the nurture, which makes sense. We're parents.
I agree. And then when you accept, I had the wonderful opportunity to work with children who were very troubled or came from troubling backgrounds before I had my own children. I even said to them, you'll have to work at shocking me. They all tried, but to come at it as an older parent and look at that and say, you know, these are unique individuals. And I had 3 in such a short period of time that I could see there wasn't a great age difference, that they were all unique individuals with their own needs and wants and desires and talents. And then to recognize that and allow them to express themselves that way. And so in money areas, that's the same thing.
Yeah.
We can't just put this separate and say financial is different. No, each one of your children will make mistakes. One of my kids decided designer jeans were in and she had to have them. She spent most of her clothing allotment in her freshman year on this very expensive pair of jeans. And she had some other ones that were cheaper. She was washing those jeans every day and saying that probably wasn't a good choice. And I bit tongue, you know, I but she had to learn it herself.
Yes.
And another one wanted Doc Martens, and I'm looking at those. Doc Martens may be foreign to people today, but these were kind of cloddy looking boots. And
no, Doc Martens came back. They came back.
Well, she saved her money for them.
Yeah.
And that's what she wanted. Let them make those decisions. One little one, especially the little ones here, might like to collect little things. And another one will save it for something bigger.
Yeah.
Which reminds me, on holidays, I gave my children up until they were able to earn money independently with jobs in the neighborhood and the like, gave them a certain amount of money on a holiday and said, this is yours for souvenirs, for extra treats or whatever. They learned to be very astute. They'd pick something out and go, no. They learn it. And we're talking 4, 5, 6-year-olds have this money that's going to burn through their pockets if they don't spend, but that's all they had. And they made choices, they made mistakes. They would even say, well, that wasn't a very good buy. So you let them make those, and you just sometimes have to sit back, bite tongue, and not I told you so. You just let them do it.
Barbara, as we're having this conversation, I am having this fantastic kind of look back at reading your book again, because now I remember why I wanted to interview you so badly, because we are so aligned. This is where I think we really connected on this idea. So I wanted to touch on a few key things. So one, you talk about share and save and spend. One of the things that we added for our money mammals is they have share and save and spend smart. And the idea, which is exactly what you're talking about, right? And it's not just semantics, because what we're trying to do here is have you learn to make better and better decisions. And that only happens to the thing that you brought up, your own experiences. And that comes from making mistakes. And I actually wanted to touch on a key point here. So you talked about on giving an allowance as a gift, right? The framing that we put on it was the idea that I make the case in my book that you don't want to tie it to chores, mainly because chores teach one lesson. It's a great lesson, which is you have to often work for money. But that's not what an allowance is designed to teach, which is exactly what you're getting at. Allowance is designed to teach you how to use money, right? To learn to share and to save and to spend smart. And when parents understand that there's a why behind the allowance, they get it much more, because a lot of people just feel they don't want it to be a handout, right? They hear handout, it just conjures up these ideas of whatever it might be. Nobody likes that concept. But if it's positioned as something that has some purpose, that has a why behind it, which is what your book is all about, is parenting with a why to give your kids, to give them a sense of purpose in their own lives. And so I just getting very excited listening to you talk about it, because your approach is so akin to what we talk about here on the Art of Allowance podcast so often. And actually the idea of the mistakes, one of the points that we've talked about as well is this idea that you see something that they've done. This is something as a parent that could be useful, which is if you see them make a mistake, let them make the mistake, but you can come back to them and talk to them about that mistake and maybe have them reflect on that mistake a week or two later, whether it's the genes or, and not not be really in a way that I think the way you were talking about it, which is have them think about the decision that they made.
And
And
often you don't even have to wait. They figure it out.
yes,
As long as they're free to make mistakes and not be fearful of punishment because of a mistake. I don't use
yes,
punishment anyways.
yes,
It's very different than discipline. But you point out one thing I like about yours is to spend smart, and to use your thinking here. And I did that with here's your money for your little trip and how to do that. And they, one would say, I don't want to spend money on that. And the other said, well, I do. Having three, it's the other one said, I'm not even interested.
yeah, yeah.
But they learn from one another as well. And again, I'm going to go back to discipline as opposed to punishment. A basic formula, whether it's money or the way they interact with other human beings, or they make a mistake, they drop something and it breaks and they didn't do it intentionally. Very simple formula as a parent. They own it, they fix it, they learn from it and move on. And if you can apply that to finances as well, own it. Nobody made you buy that you made that choice. Fix it. Is there a way you can fix it? Maybe you want to be part of a garage sale where you can sell that batch of mistakes. Learn from it. I did that impulsively.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where our wisdom comes in to help them. Okay, when you make a mistake, this is what you need to do. Own it, fix it, learn from it, move on. I've gone to preschools where that's been posted when you make a mistake, because you can start that young.
Yeah.
So why not with finances?
Yeah. Well, that was the other point I wanted to make was I love the starting early is so important, because more than anything, what you want to do as a parent is be prepped for the money conversations way before you know it. There'll be pretty in-depth questions by the time they're 3 or 4. And if you're not prepared for how you're going to answer those questions in an age appropriate way, you want to have an open, honest, ongoing conversation about money as early as possible. So that's why I really like what you're talking about. The other point, and this echoes, I had Chelsea Brennan on, who's the smart money mama, and her kids got debit cards at 7 and 4. And to your point, the 4-year-old got it because the 7-year-old got it, right?
Yes.
And same thing with ours. The first one, we started an allowance too early for her, restarted it when she was 5, almost 6. But the young one was ready for an allowance at 4 because she was seeing the older kid. So I really like that you're endorsing this idea of one of the debit cards, because I think what you're saying is, digital money is the way that they're going to interact with money. They've got to figure that out from the get-go. It's going to be a conversation. They'll probably ask you about it, right?
Yes. Yes. And they're going to want to know, again, it's just like with choices with red pajama, blue pajama, constantly increasing responsibilities and decision-making opportunities. If kids are in the digital world today, they need to learn to handle that digital world.
Yeah.
And, 7 is the age of reason in lots of cultures, actually, because developmentally it is. And if you have a younger child, they're going to learn at a younger age from the siblings or cousins if you have an extended family. And so use that opportunity. Those little ones can teach their siblings. And if you've taught them in a healthy way, they'll be giving advice. It's so fun to listen to an older one say, I made this mistake. And we aren't even talking to them. They're figuring it out. I'm not sure you want to buy that and yet the middle one might say, but I'm getting it. So those freedoms to have for that is so important. And learning all those 3 buckets and how they are flexible.
Yeah. Okay. Now I'm going to ask you a question that is definitely going to feel like it's leading the witness, but I still have to ask it.
You can.
And that is so one of the things that parents like to do, right, is pay their kids for grades. But I'm asking this question mainly because we're talking about just bribes in general, right? And this is not meant to be accusatory, but the problem is that they actually work in the short term, right? You can actually get the result. If the result is increased grades, that's what makes this difficult is parents will see the success in terms of the grades, but what's wrong with the approach? What
we
damage
do that
might
at
we
cost.
be doing?
It costs them. I use Alfie Kohn, who wrote Punished by Rewards, fascinating book.
Fantastic book.
You know,
Yes.
he said bribes and threats and rewards and punishments are flip side of the same coin. They don't buy us much. I like to
Yep.
go one step further. They bankrupt the spirit of children.
Mm.
Because what we are saying is that I'm controlling you, which remember, we do not want to do. A bribe is just a pleasant threat. Think about it. Eat everything on your plate, you can have dessert is just a nice way, a pleasant way of saying you don't eat it, you don't get dessert. You just said it nicer, but it's the same thing. And you say, and then what you're teaching kids is that what's on your plate is so bad, we have to bribe you to eat it. Think about that.
Yeah. Sure.
So school is so difficult that we have to bribe you to do good at it. And that's really putting the kid down. And so I give alternatives to bribes and threats because they do interfere with ethical behavior. That little girl in the lunchroom is not going to go sit next to the new girl if it costs her, if she has learned that I am valued only because somebody can bribe me and threaten me. That young high status social bully can't bribe her if the young girl is not attached to bribes.
Mm-hmm.
If we haven't used them, home is a very important school in teaching kids how to behave ethically around money. And that gets into scams as they get older and that kind of thing. But around all areas of their lives. So what would be an alternative? There's an old Sufi saying, before you kill the cat, make arrangements for the mice. I mean, you don't want to get rid of something and not have something to take its place. And so I offer, they need encouragement, they need feedback, and they need a sense of someone cares deeply about them. And then they need discipline, which is a whole nother conversation. But encouragement. Encouragement is the 6 critical life messages. Every child needs this. As an educator, I say every kid who walks out that door needs these messages. I don't care where kids come from. Dad's an alcoholic. Mother has an interesting occupation. Brother's been in jail. Every kid needs this message. And as parents, every one of our children need this every day. I believe in you. I trust in you. I know you can handle this. You're listened to, cared for, very important to me. They need to hear that. Now think of that in terms of finance. I believe in you. I trust you. You can handle this. It's the same kind of message. So instead of bribes and threats and rewards and punishments, encouragement, feedback. Now feedback comes in 3 C's: compliments, comments, and constructive criticism. Again, think of this in terms of finance. A compliment. Wow, look how much you saved for that object you wanted. I knew you could do it, which is going back to encouragement. Mm-hmm. Instead of, I'm so proud of you. What's the flip of I'm proud of you? I'm ashamed of you.
Yeah.
Well, I'm ashamed. And no, I want my kids to feel honest guilt when they've done something they shouldn't have done, not me imposing shame on them. Yeah. So they need compliment. Best compliment you can give a child is thank you. Thank you for walking the dog. He's been inside all day. Look how happy he is to be outside. Thank you for watering that plant. It was really wilted. Now it's standing strong. Notice I didn't say tall. That's a bias against short. We have a cultural bias against short. Stand strong. Every plant, every kid can stand strong. It's standing strong now. Thank you for inviting the new boy to your birthday party. I'm sure it will mean a lot to him to be included. Notice how you do that. You stroke the deed, not the kid. Not, I'm proud of you. You're such a good big brother, after he hammered his little brother and you didn't see it. But, stroke the deed, not the kid. Be very specific to the deed. And you tell the child what his or her actions did for the dog or the plant or another human being. Mm-hmm. That's a compliment. Yeah. And you do that, and then they know that they can make a mistake and not know you're going to be ashamed of them. I want to stay away from proud and shame. And so they need a compliment. They need comments, good, solid instruction. This is where in finances, it's so critical that we teach them. This is a penny, a nickel, a dime. And I'll guarantee you, if you have an older one, the little one will learn very quickly that a dime, even though it's smaller, is worth more than a nickel after the brother has tried to cheat him out of the dime. They learn. So they need instructions about that. We also need to teach them what it means to save. Smart. I like your idea there. And then to share with others and to save. And the save and share can go together. The kids, having 3 of them, for special occasions for grandma and grandpa, and for My grandchildren, they were great grandma and grandpa's still alive. My husband's grandmother died at 105, there's
Wow.
longevity there. They would pool their savings to buy a special gift for grandma. So
Mm.
in the saving and sharing, sometimes it's sharing those resources with siblings to go together to buy something special. And so they all fit together but who's going to teach them? If we don't, they'll learn it, but they may not learn what you would like them to learn about money. They're going to school and having lunch money extorted. This is where
Yeah.
little cards pay. They can't be extorted for that. And they can't steal money from your purse if the bully's extorting them. There's a lot of advantages to teaching them very young to do money safely. That should be
Yeah.
another S.
Yeah.
Not only smart, but safe. How do they do that? And then, so comments is good, solid instruction in all areas of their lives, their own person, about sexuality, about relationships with other human beings, making friends. Those have to be taught. And so we do that around finances as well. And then, so you have compliments, comments, now constructive criticism. I give the example of your child comes home with an A plus. How you behave right there matters. Do you put it up on the refrigerator for the other side of the family to look at? A1 speller, and no, she got an A plus. Will they come home and
What have you done for me lately,
share?
second child?
But think about it. You have two children. One is very good at spelling. It just comes naturally. And another one struggles, but they both come home with an A plus. And you say to the one, talk to me about it. And she says, look, Mom, I got all the words right, even spelled February right, and an R's in a funny place. She gets excited about her own excitement. And you can give her a high five, but it's with her excitement. Praise-dependent kids wait for you to give them a compliment. Do you like this? Is this okay? Getting approval. I don't want that. I don't want praise-dependent kids. I want the kid to say, I did it. But she can also come home and say, I blew the spelling exam. Just talk to me about it. What can we do? Can we help you? What do you need to do? Now, the one that got the A plus and always gets the A plus, we often give bumper stickers. I have an honor student at such and such school. It makes me crazy. You have two kids, one on the honor roll, one not. Do you take the sticker off when the other's in the car? I mean, think about it. Instead of being a proud parent of a student at a certain school when we need tax money, So it all ties in. So with that child, I say, talk to me about it. And she looks at me like, well, spelling's easy. And I say, you know what? You have a phenomenal gift.
Yeah.
We have to find a way for you to use that gift instead of, I'm so proud of you. She won't take trigonometry in high school if she's afraid she won't get an A. She'll take underwater basket weaving instead. That's the praise dependent part with bribes and threats. They go together. And so I say, we go to the senior center and you are so good at spelling. That's a gift you have. There are people there who have Parkinson's and they have difficulty writing, or there's somebody who's visually impaired and they can't see. Can you go and write thank you notes for them? Can you write letters to their families? Knowing that when you have a gift, you have an obligation to use that gift. Do you see how different that is? And I'm so proud of you. You got straight A's.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very different mindset. And I try to carry that over in all areas, including in financing. They make a mistake, they can own it, fix it, learn from it, move on.
Yeah.
I also want them to know that if they made a good choice, I say, talk to me about it. It's a wonderful line you can use in lots of situations. A kid comes home from school, you say, how's your day? And he goes, fine. But you're too busy to notice the body language is not saying fine. Instead, if you turn around, you say, doesn't look like fine, talk to me about it. You'll learn more from him. And he said, well, I said I was fine. I said, your body didn't speak that.
Yeah.
And I'm listening to your body too. So it comes in all areas. You see, finance doesn't just drop in all by itself. You'll notice I put that as a separate chapter in my book, but it fits the same guidelines.
Yeah.
With developmental levels. And when they leave our homes, believe me, they need to have full control over how to handle their finances. They may even be coming back to you with things you don't know, because who knows what's going to be developed later. I mean, we didn't have cryptocurrency. We didn't have real tuned into the stock market. And some kids are living in families where that's just part of their life because they watch mom and dad do it. and others have no clue. I came from a very poor family, and my parents hadn't graduated from high school. I'm a generation over you, at 77. Um, with my mom and dad, they had no clue how to get my older sister. We were 13 months apart. How she could go to college. And an English teacher, Claude Higgins, came out to my mom and dad at their home. And my mother made cream puffs, which was special and all that, for them. And my dad was an electrician, so finally put plates on some of the electrical outlets for a teacher's coming to our home. And he showed them how we could apply for grants, apply for loans to get into college. So what my sister did for us was my mom and dad worked through that process to get her in school, in college, and she became a teacher. It made it a whole lot easier for me to do the same. But somebody had to teach them. So the same with finances. That was part of financial knowledge my parents did not have. They did not know how to put 5 kids through college. Well, there were ways that we could do that, work study, applying for grants, applying for Pella grants and the like. So that's part of the instruction. And now the opposite can happen today with people losing their jobs, possibly falling into a severe recession, where if we have talked honestly to kids about money and how much we can afford to give them when they are teenagers and mom and dad have lost their jobs, the teenager is more likely to be willing to pitch in. Because poorer families have done that always. Many of our migrant children, when there were rough times, they were out in the fields doing that kind of work. So we can learn from maybe grandparents about how to handle this. But don't scare your kids. Don't say, oh my God, we're losing the house. We're going to, you use your wisdom here. How much can they handle?
Yeah.
Especially when they're older. We need to be honest with them. The younger ones, we can say, well, it doesn't fit in the budget. What's a budget? They know because you've taught them what a budget is. They don't have to have the biggest, the best, the brightest, because that doesn't help them learn to be sharers in the world, to be compassionate in the world. Are there ever limits there? Yes. If your kid's giving away all of his winter coats, because he has 3, but he's giving them all away, you have to say, whoa, time out. Which one do you want to keep? I don't say you need to keep the newest. I say, which one do you want to keep? And they may choose the lighter weight one because the other 2 kids have nothing. That's their choice. Let them make that choice.
To your point about kids contributing, if you as a parent or family are going through a difficult time, I remember talking to a counselor about this, and they said, the kids know that there's a difficult time going on, right? So you're much better off just addressing it, and they want to be a part of the solution. And again, to your point, the solution has to be age appropriate, but it really gets back to this theme that we've been talking about this open conversation that we've been having. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, it's like brick wall, jellyfish, and backbone again. Brick wall, nothing's wrong. We're not going to talk about it, or we're going to have a garage sale and sell all your toys,
right?
Because we need the money. Scare the heck out of the kid. Jellyfish is, we'll get through. Credit cards are adding up until we crash.
Yeah.
But backbone is willing to say to the kids, it's tight. And but again, I go back to the 6 critical life measures. We're going to get through this. Notice I didn't say, well, I'm going to get through this. We are going to get through this.
Yes.
Whether it's an illness, it's finances, we're going to get through this. Family is a unit, and sometimes extended family. And we depend on grandma or grandpa during this hard time, whether the hardship's an illness or it's a financial. But doing it with sensitivity and wisdom. That's why, spending smart is so critical, but also saving. You say, but I want to dip into. Well, that's where you teach young kids to save for short-term and long-term. And you can say as a parent, let's say you've got a wealthy relative who believes in giving your kids phenomenal gifts for their birthdays. You can say, or it's you're co-parenting because of a divorce, and they want to play Disney dad or Disney mom, you can say, look, you can give my kid up to this limit amount of money. That's fair. That's wise. That's being a responsible parent. The rest can go into his savings account for college or her savings account for something, that senior trip that she wants to go on. You can put limits on how much people give your child. That's being a good parent, because they don't need a check for $1,000 on their 10th birthday. They need a small amount or a token, maybe. And I also recommend, especially to older grandparents or grandaunts or whatever, that, you know what, maybe something that's special to you. My grandson was very close to my mother, who died at 92, and she taught him to make rice pudding. What did he want? Her rice bowl. Everybody else is looking at a rice bowl. He wanted to be able to, and he makes it for holidays. Those kinds of special gifts. But grandma wouldn't have thought of that had he not expressed an interest. So you can say, do you have anything special? Now, if they give them a ruby ring that may have to go in a vault for a while, goes in a vault.
How do you advise parents? Because one of the issues that I typically run into when I'm doing classes about allowance or raising money smart kids, and this ties to just parenting in general, is what happens when you're not in sync with your partner, right? So whether it's one is jellyfish and one is brick wall or whatever it might be, do you have any suggestions about how parents can deal with that? Because I think it's a fairly common issue.
Yes, brick walls and jellyfishes often find one another because it's a missing piece in their minds, but it does not a backbone family make. You both have to explore where you came from, your history, how were you dealt with, what tools in that parenting toolbox do you need to get rid of, and what will serve you better. That means you have to practice those new tools. And that's where, even in co-parenting after a divorce, it is so critical, if they're really going to co-parent, that they sit down and talk about, we're both unique human beings and we will do things differently, but there are certain things that won't serve our child well. And being open. And sometimes it's a third party that has to kind of help with what serves your child best. Because whoever the custodial parent is has to make decisions, not because you're seeking revenge or want to punish somebody, but what's best for the kid.
So when I think about everything you're talking about, and I remember thinking about this when I'm reading the book, is, you bring to bear so much experience. I think you seem like someone who's just a very naturally reflective person, very thoughtful person. And you think about the craziness of being a parent, which you went through. You had three kids in 3 years. Do you have any recommendations for parents to figure out how to have this reflective time, or how they can start to think through dealing with the differences with their partners, dealing with how kids might be the different types of personalities the kids have? How do you build in reflection into a day, assuming that's what's going on here? How do you build the time to think about these issues into a day that already feels so jam-packed with stuff?
Well, I told you I was greatly influenced by my 3.5 years at the convent, but I also have to look at, my father used to say when we would break up with a boyfriend or have trauma at school, sit down, shut up, and get to like yourself. Now, that isn't quite what we learned, but sit down, shut up, be quiet. You have a struggle with something, to be able to pull apart. And I worked a bit with the nurture group. I think Eddie is the one who introduced me that I was on the nurture board there, where it's an interactive app to help 4 to 7-year-olds learn a whole lot, including financial literacy. And I worked with them on breathing exercises for little ones. Well, we could benefit from doing those same activities. If we feel ourselves getting angry, anger's an emotion. It's not good or bad. It's real. And so what do we do with that? If we feel it, because when you sit and be quiet with it, you'll often find out you're afraid or you're sad, and this is how you're expressing it because that's how you learn to express it. But to come apart and rest a while, to make it a habit to do that. The interesting thing about that, when you're sitting and you're being quiet and not thinking about what you need to be thinking about, solutions come in an interesting way that you may not have ever thought of before. But if you're always thinking about it and getting agitated about it, this is a problem, how are we going to solve it? Then in that panic, you may not come with reasonable solutions. I make it a habit to come apart and rest a while every day because
Hmm.
I need that.
Yeah.
I may have been doing 7 hours of lecturing in Amman, Jordan a few weeks ago. I needed time before that, not to worry about what I was going to say and the like, but just to get myself centered and peaceful and trust
Yeah.
that I could do this, or trust that any question you can believe. When I was in Amman, Jordan, there were some pretty interesting questions in terms of world events. And so I don't worry about, how am I going to answer this? How am I going to answer this? It's just being calm. And it's amazing because then answers come. But it's being
But
calm.
okay,
And the
but
same thing with resting and worry. We worry.
right.
I do what I call assertive worrying. I worry when I need to, then there's no time to, because I have to be doing something. If
Right.
we worry that this might happen, this might happen, this might happen, or that when my kid's at the home, now if there's danger at that home, you have to do something. But if I worry about it, then I get all agitated and my body tenses up. And then somebody comes to the door to say something catastrophic has happened. I can't even deal with it. I'm exhausted.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
if I do
Sure.
assertive worrying and say, I trust my grandson out driving, I trust my daughter out driving, I trust that they can handle it. If something did happen, you know what? I haven't worried about it. I
Yeah.
can then do something about it. It's
Yeah.
a very different mindset than a worry, worry, worry,
But for the okay, so but for people who didn't spend their time in a contemplative setting, okay, that's great. That sounds good, Barbara. I don't have time to do this stuff. So what does that look like for you? Is this like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes? What
I
is it that helps you center yourself?
I grab time during the day. Somebody's late. I don't stir about the fact they're late. I just use it to just be calm
Mm.
because nobody can bother me. If I'm at a doctor's office and they're not there, maybe
Yeah.
emergency came up, instead of fuming about it, take the time to just be calm, to breathe.
Yep.
That's why I think it's so important to teach young children
Yeah.
to breathe, to be restful. And it's snatching time. For instance, bedtime. When I had the three little ones at home, one of us did the dishes and one of us put the kids to bed. One of us got a
Hmm.
break. One of us may not have. But you look at that as the dishes may have been the break.
Sure.
Now, the
Yeah.
other one is putting the kids down. But when you stay with your little ones, I think, no, they've got to learn to sleep by themselves and stuff. I know it's story time and no cell phone activity, none of that. I did that with my grandchildren. It follows them as they get older.
Hmm.
But if you lay down with them, and used to rub their backs and their heads. And if you have a child with ADHD, I rub the bottom of their feet. You ask any reflexologist and they'll say, rubbing the feet, not tickle, 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 but firm rubbing. It does two things. One, it calms them down, and two, they can't get out of bed when you're hanging onto their feet. So, you're keeping them calm, and you're saying calm instead of you need to go to bed. You need to go to bed. Get back
Yeah.
up in bed. Is okay. Something's going on in this little one's life. I'm not going to find it out now. We're not going to talk about it now unless they want to talk about it. We're just going to relax.
Hmm.
There are snippets during the day. And remember, I didn't learn to do the calming in the convent only, although that was a great experience. I learned to do that at home when we would be agitated. Sit down, shut up, and get to like yourself kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
So I think it's snatching those moments, understanding that if you worry, most of what you worry about will not happen.
Yeah.
And if it does happen, you won't have the energy to deal with it. So give yourself that grace to have the energy to, okay, I believe in you. I trust in you. I know you can handle this. You're listened to, cared for, very important to me. 6 critical life messages, give them to yourself and let them know. And I talked about in that third C, constructive criticism, I gave you what to do when something hasn't gone amiss, but what do you do when it has? Talk to me about it. But I also say to kids, that's not right. Notice I didn't say that's wrong. That's
Yep.
not right is bigger than right or wrong. 2 kids making up a game only 2 can play.
Hmm.
There's nothing wrong with that, but it's not right if you did it to intentionally exclude someone.
Yes.
So that's not right. But the other reason is that's not right means it's possible to fix it.
Yeah.
It's that optimism. Okay, so you did something with your money you shouldn't have done. That's not right. It's not wrong. It's not right. So what can
Yeah.
you do to fix what you did? That's a more optimistic. And when I talk about calming down, part of that is having what Viktor Frankl called, he was a death camp survivor. He said, tragic optimism. When you've been brought to your knees in grief, can you get up in the morning, fix your children breakfast, say, we're going to get through this? We can get through the financial hard times.
Yeah.
Generations before us have done it. It's not easy. It will mean sacrifices, hopefully for the adults more than the children. But we can get through that. And I want young people to know, again, going back to finances, that if you taught them to spend smart, I really do like that, spend smart and save short-term and long-term. And usually long-term requires 2 signatures so that they don't haul off with their university money when they get mad at you. And to share generously.
Yeah.
And learning to share generously means to do it in a smart way.
Yeah.
So it all fits together. It isn't just something, okay, I have to teach my kids finances. No, you use every opportunity. There is some structure to it, like getting them a card and the like. But in that structure, there's a lot of freedom for each person to be their own unique selves and to learn to handle their own finances with plenty of mistakes, because we all make them.
Well, I like that framing too of grabbing the time, because you realize there's a surprising amount of time that's available. And we kind of say that in our family. It's like, how can you turn this problem into a gift or turn this problem into an opportunity? We kind of will say it jokingly, but it is meant to say, okay, well, that stinks that happened, but you're in traffic, so maybe there's something else you can do, whether it's listen to a podcast, grab a little time to think and reflect by yourself rather than get upset at the other people that are in the same situation that you are. I like that framing. I think we will all discover there's a lot more time in the day, to your point,
and time with your own children when you're flabbergasted. You might even say to all of them, including a teenager, I need to get out, clear my head, come for a walk with me, would you? Ask them. Say to the little ones, you know what? This is a mess right here, right now. The house is a mess. And not let's get busy with it before we go out to the park. Kids need to learn to rest, rebel, and recreate, not recreate in that teenage sense. And chores are another thing, doing chores together. So it's the big C and the 3 R's, teaching them to rest. And relax. Those are 2 different things. And rebel, giving them the opportunity to express their Doc Marten shoes, or their mixed clothes, or a meal where they help put it together, or they did it all by themselves. But saying to the kids, you know what, this house is an absolute mess. Your bedrooms, things are growing in. Let's go to the park. We have this idea you have to earn recreation and rest. We don't. It should become a part of our lives. The kids will be better for it. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. Well, Barbara, there are so many additional questions that I have, but I am mindful of your time, and I think we've covered a lot of ground. I do want to get to our fast and fun round questions. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about with regard to discipline that would be useful for parents to know, that to give them some context?
The difference between punishment and discipline. Punishment's adult-oriented. It's imposed from without. It arouses resentment and often teaches kids to do 3 F's, to fear, fight back, or flee into themselves, not telling you anything, or out the front door if they're teenagers. Discipline, on the other hand, if you go back to the Latin roots, to discipline with authority means to give life to a child's learning. And that's what we want to do. Punishment, you do something to a child. Discipline, you do something with a child. And if they make a mistake, their job, you say, why do we need discipline for a mistake? Because remember, discipline gives life to a child's learning. Own it, fix it, learn from it, move on. So I break issues into mistakes, mischief, and mayhem. I just put out a new book on that topic, 54 years of working in discipline areas. If it's a mistake, that's accidentally marking on the table when you were coloring. Mischief is tic-tac-toe on that table. Mayhem is carving another kid's name in a gross term. All marks. So mistakes, we've got the formula. Mischief, if it's mischief, show them what they've done wrong. Give them ownership to the best of their ability. Give them ways to solve it. That's where our wisdom comes in. And leave their dignity intact. So they have a job. The consequence for doing a tic-tac-toe on the desk needs to be reasonable, simple, valuable, and practical. The French term, répondez s'il vous plaît, which means please respond. Should be more work for them than for you. Punishment's more work for you than them. So what? Reasonable, simple, valuable, practical. Grounding a kid, removing their allowance from them. It's not reasonable. It's simple, but it's not valuable or practical. Will not teach them. And he has a mark on the table. He needs to clean it up. So it's reasonable. Wipe that off. Simple. Wipe it off. Valuable. This is where we need to talk to the child about, you know what? You always can put it on a piece of paper. We may have a wall in the house that we can just write things on. You paint it before you leave the house, but you do that. And leave their dignity intact always. Remember, you're doing something with the child in discipline. Now, if it's mayhem, which hopefully most of the people listening won't have to deal with, but we all, kids have free will and peer pressure. Or they wrote a child's name. That's a bigger issue because that's mean and cruel. And mean and cruel is much more difficult than the carving in the desk. First of all, they have to repair that. Yes, but they have to repair. There's 3 R's for the mayhem: restitution, own and fix what you did; resolution, tell me how you're going to keep that from happening again. Well, I won't ever do that on the desk. That's what you won't do. Tell me what you will do. And this is where your wisdom comes in with you have to make amends for what you posted online. You have to get it removed and give them all the ways that they can deal with it, but they have to be held accountable. Notice that isn't taking their allowance away. It isn't punishing them, isn't grounding them for 6 months. None of those, which are all punishment, work. But holding them accountable, this is where I was working with young offenders. And the last one, if it's a conflict they're in, then it's reconciliation. If it's mean and cruel, there's restoration. How are you going to repair the damage you caused to this kid? And how are you going to repair that relationship? It's repairable. But most issues that we're going to be working with young kids is mistakes and mischief. But you discipline in all of that. A child breaks a glass. Brick wall's going to say, get out of the kitchen. You're going to use plastic the next 30 years of your life. Which says to the kid, when you have a problem, you are a problem. Jellyfish goes, oh my goodness, what was I thinking giving you a slippery glass? Oh, come on over here and have some chocolate milk while I clean it up. Which says, when you have a problem, find somebody else to blame it on. And I get those kids in school where they come and say, well, it wasn't my fault. Worksheet wasn't dark enough. Teacher didn't give me enough time. The kid behind me was bugging me. But backbone parent looks at that little one and says, oh, you have a problem. Go get me a bag. 3-year-olds can't pick up glass. They can hold a bag. You put the glass in, they help mop the floor up, and then you say, which of these glasses do you think you can use today? Maybe one with handles, or maybe it's plastic, but give them some options to choose. My son made a goal for the other team in a major soccer tournament. He came out as goalie, went in as forward, and went down and made the wrong goal, the wrong team. His coach held that
own goal.
Yeah. Joseph went over and said, I'm sorry, coach. He said, I don't want him sorry. That was a beautiful goal. Now get out there and get one for our team. You made a mistake. Own it, fix it, learn from it. Now move on. He did make a goal for his own team. And the other team made another goal, so it wasn't standing out there with his goal. But that's what you do. It doesn't matter what age. Kid breaks a beaker in science class. Same thing. Own it, fix it, learn from it. Now let's move on. But when mischief, which is one of the things we deal with a lot, and it's that tic-tac-toe on the desk or grabbing your sister's toy in a conflict, it's basically show them what they've done wrong, give them ownership, give them ways to solve it, leave their dignity intact. And when you deal with the big stuff, the bullying, other form, vandalism, mayhem, it's restorative practices, the 3 R's. And hopefully most people will not have to deal with that, but with bullying on the rise and mean and cruel on the rise, they may either be the target or the not so innocent bystanders or the kid doing the mean and cruel. Intentionally getting pleasure from somebody's pain is a big issue. So I think you can look at that with all that you want to do as a parent is be who you are, not the best you can be, but all who you are in the moment for your child. Whether it's dealing with finance, it's dealing with sibling rivalry, mealtime or bedtime or chores. It's looking and reflecting and saying, I'm not a perfect parent because I had lost it. We all lose it. Then you own it. And my oldest said, yeah, we're so lucky because we're not perfect kids either. Okay, now we can start over. We can move on from here and just begin.
I'm glad I asked you that perspective on discipline because I think it's really important. It's a big part of what you do and what you talk about in the book. Barbara, I really appreciate all your perspective. Now, are you ready for the fast and fun round.
Yes. Yes.
All right.
Oh, am I ever? I just have to trust. Ask me.
Well, here we go. What does the term money empowered mean to you?
It means being financially astute, financially informed, and being able to spend, save, and share in a smart way, as you said, in what I would also call an optimistic way. That sense of optimism is we can make this work.
What is the best investment of time or money you ever spent on your kids?
Can I give you two?
You can give me two, yes.
Because it's in the good times and the rough times. To celebrate the good times and help make them happen, but don't make them happen always. You see a moment that we can celebrate and come together, but in the rough times to be present to them, to say, I'm here and I care. Because when you model that for them, then they're more likely to be here and care as well. The modeling is critical. You just can't count on modeling to do it all. It's a matter of talking it. Through the good times and the rough times, we are a family and we're going to get through the good times and celebrate those, remember those, cherish them, and the rough times. And you say, I'm not going to cherish the rough times. No, we cherish what we learn and who we become through those rough times.
Very nice. If you could go back and tell your younger self one thing, Barbara, what would it be?
To be more patient with myself, because when you're patient with yourself, then you tend to be more patient with others and to, practice that patience. Coming apart and resting a while and all of that is very different from being patient with yourself. Because I'm in such a different place now in my own life, but I was impatient for things to happen, impatient for things to be finished, recognizing that most things in life are never finished. They're just threads in that tapestry of life, or they're the part of the journey, but never the full journey. So be patient.
Hear, hear. If you could transmit a message that everyone would see, Barbara, skywritten on billboards everywhere, what would that message be?
I think I started my first book with it, actually. Because they are children, they have dignity and worth simply because they are. They don't have to prove anything to us. They don't have to be something we want them to be. We need them to be all they can be. You and I can't even dream the dreams this next generation is going to have, or answer the questions that will be put to them. So it's to recognize because they are children, they have dignity and worth simply because they're here. Yeah. And so recognize that I and thou, that common humanity that we are. Archbishop Desmond Tutu said it even better. He said, we're interconnected, interrelated, interdependent. We're in this mess together. And if we can remind ourselves in our small family of that and spread that further and further, then when we look at another human being, we look at them differently because they have something unique to offer us and we have something unique to offer them. And that connection is our humanity. And that includes that little one who's driving us crazy right now to be able to say, you matter. Yeah. Because you are.
Beautiful. So Barbara, as we wrap things up, what is the one Money Smarts book, podcast, or media other than your own that you recommend the most often?
I've been involved with a group called Nurture and have been fascinated from the very beginning. They brought me in as a parenting expert, they said, but I'm a parenting educator. I don't know anybody that's expert in the field because I keep learning. Nurture, working with many, many young people in creating an interactive learning app for 4 to 7-year-olds. That has been exciting for me because I have no idea how they animate that. I have no idea how they put that together. And the reason I hooked into this, the important life skills to help them be future ready. Yeah. We don't look at deficit. It's being ready for what can come, like credit cards, and different ways of dealing with money and different situations that are happening. But it's an interactive app, and I'm really impressed with how it has grown over the past 4 years that I have been involved. And what's kind of fun is, I'm 3 generations removed from some of those young people. They could be my grandkids. And to watch them not only respect my point of view, but for me to be open to theirs.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, bribes and threats, rewards and punishments were a big part if you look at the gaming world. And
Mm-hmm.
Nurture has opted to move from that. You don't get rewards and the like
Mm.
where you're doing interactive games. So that's an exciting thing for me
Mm.
because it's a whole new world,
Yeah.
an app
Yeah.
world with animation and teaching young people. So problem solving and emotional regulation, which is through play, the breathing activities, but also that very astute in the financial area. I wrote about it, what, 30 years ago, and basically most of it is still what I would suggest, except the new activities that relate to it, because those didn't
Yeah.
exist. Young people are native to this. So working with Nurture has been a real gift because it keeps me on my toes.
That's great. Well, we will include the links there. And a final question I have for you, Barbara, is how can people find you? When we have the Nurture app, we'll put all those links, and we'll have links to your books. But how can people find you to the extent that you want them to find you online?
Yeah. We have a web page. It's called Kids Are Worth It, title of my first book.
Yeah,
It's www.kidsareworthitoaltogether.com.
great.
And we do have an email, and I never mind people email me with questions. And sometimes I don't get to them. It's info.kidsareworthit@gmail.com. You can find me, not because I posted it, but others have different lectures on YouTube.
Great.
There's quite a few from, I think it covers almost all the books and lectures that I've given. So they're there. And I think Amazon has most of my books. If you're from other countries, there are different apps that do that. Books are in 26 different languages. Thank you, Oprah, for my
Not hard
exposure
to find,
there.
right? Not hard to find your material.
Yeah.
Not to mention the fact that you're referenced in so much other material as well. Well, Barbara, this was a treat for me. I was really looking forward to this. I learned a lot. I have about a million other questions.
I've so appreciated this because, I think we are in sync philosophically
Yeah, I
on
think
this.
so too.
And I'm so glad Eddie mentioned my name to you. Eddie's
Well, I'm
from,
glad to.
yeah, one of the people that I work with at Nurture.
Well, it's very rare that you have the experience where when I read the book, I did want to interview you. I think I may have reached out to one of your people at the time, and to have someone actually, because you get a lot of people requesting opportunities, and then Eddie reached out and said, Barbara Coloroso. I'm like, are you kidding me? Sign her up. Let's go. Let's
I'm
have that
ready. And I
conversation.
appreciate it looking at your web and looking at your materials because I thought we were, and we are, very
Yeah.
closely aligned and with the same issues, even
Yes,
a
exactly.
generation apart and
Yeah.
different age children, because we truly are, as a community, all in this together. And whatever we can share with one another, none of us have a lock on truth
Nope.
or
I agree.
ideas. And working with this has been a joy for me to
Yeah.
be able to just talk with you because it really is talking with you.
Well, it's been a lot of fun. Thank you, Barbara. Appreciate your time.
And thank you very much, John.